Chapter 11. Was it Cootie? Maggie asked quietly. Really? I never said that, did I? I replied, surprised. Yet Maggie's stare still carried doubt, as though every word I spoke failed to convince her. I drew a deep breath before slowly struggling to my feet. She remained seated in the kitchen rather than the sitting room. Although supper was already prepared, she seemed to have chosen that corner, as though distance itself could protect her from my story. I walked toward the bathroom to relieve myself. Just then I heard her call from behind. I think we should have supper first before continuing. As I stepped back into the room, I found Fred standing beside her. The familiar glare still rested on his face, though by then I was no longer afraid of it. Of course we need to eat first, Fred said firmly, looking straight into my eyes. My old eyes could no longer challenge his, yet they still possessed enough strength to recognize the innocence hidden within them. Then my gaze drifted toward Maggie's swollen belly. A gentle smile escaped me despite the tears that still lingered on my cheeks. So you've come all this way just to tell stories? Fred asked as he took another bite of food. Silence settled over the table. Maggie glanced at me briefly before returning to her meal. Fred lowered his eyes as though even the food had lost its taste. I think this conversation can wait until after supper, Maggie suggested softly. The next 20 minutes might have passed peacefully had Fred not suddenly stood up and walked straight toward the bedroom. Fred, we're not finished eating yet, Maggie called after him. How can you leave your mother-in-law alone at the table? She followed him immediately. I tried to continue eating, but before long, the taste disappeared from my mouth. Despite everything about Fred's behavior, guilt continued to weigh heavily upon my heart. A few moments later, Maggie returned alone, the sadness on her face even more visible than before. Will he be all right? I asked. Maggie let out a quiet laugh. Really? I've been telling you since this afternoon that Fred doesn't want you here, yet you still think he'll somehow accept all this? Before I could answer, the bedroom door swung open again. Fred walked past us without a word and headed straight for the front door. The loud slam echoed through the house. There, Maggie sighed, glancing at the wall clock. Just imagine where he could be going at this hour. It was already 10 o'clock. The silence inside the house blended gently with the darkness outside. Maggie walked over and pulled the curtains across the window. The lights inside gave us warmth, though nothing about the atmosphere felt any lighter. She cleared the dishes from the dining table while I remained seated in silence. Part of me wanted to believe that her coldness no longer mattered. Another part insisted that I still had to tell the rest of the story. Mother, it's getting late. Can't this wait until tomorrow? Maggie asked as she settled onto the sofa. A smile instantly crossed my face. You just called me mother, I whispered, reaching toward her. She quickly looked away. It was only a slip of the tongue. Her words settled heavily inside me. Not until you tell me why you later chose to treat me that way, she replied, her eyes fixed on mine. I took a slow breath and gently held her hands. For a long moment our eyes remained locked. Mine pleaded for understanding, then I whispered softly, just one more hour. She looked at me without speaking, and once again I disappeared into the past. After hearing that Mr. Ieyasu had been released, Naka wasted no time. One night's rest was enough. The following morning she found a way to visit his home. She took me with her. By the time the early sunlight reached his compound, Kamada noticed our unexpected arrival. Months had passed since he had last seen us. Perhaps he already guessed why we had come, yet no fear showed on his face. Instead, he simply walked toward us and greeted us politely. Naka ignored the greeting. Where is your father? She asked. I remained behind her, partly out of fear and partly hoping she would never discover how deeply I believed I was connected to everything that had happened. Kamada avoided looking at me, yet that did nothing to erase the guilt that still lived inside my heart. He left us standing in the compound and disappeared into the house. Only he and his father lived there now. 5 years earlier, Kamada had lost his mother. Since that day, Mr. Ieyasu had never truly recovered from the grief of her death. At my age, I had never understood the stories people told about Malibu Forest. To me, they sounded like the bedtime tales Mother used to tell us. She always spoke of goats disappearing into its darkness, never of the people who never returned. Now, as Mr. Ieyasu began speaking, those forgotten stories suddenly carried a different meaning. My wife was found dead inside Malibu Forest, he said quietly after inviting us to sit. When I tried to explain what happened that night, no one believed me. Naka leaned forward. And what does that have to do with father's death? She asked firmly. I tried to interrupt, but she silenced me immediately. These matters are beyond your understanding. I fell silent. Yet one question remained trapped inside me. If my presence meant nothing, why had she brought me along? Go on, Naka ordered. Explain yourself. Kamada remained seated several meters away. He looked calm and composed, yet he continued avoiding my eyes. Finally, Mr. Kayasu spoke again. Let me make one thing clear. I don't care what people think of me. I don't care whether you believe me or not. But your father's body was found in the very same forest where my wife's body was discovered. He paused before continuing. Her neck had been twisted, so was your father's. He slowly rose to his feet. There is a possibility that whatever killed your father was the same thing that killed my wife. Whether it was human or something else. His eyes met Naka's. We have both tasted grief, but working together to uncover the truth is far better than blaming me for a quarrel we had before his death.